Good day, everyone. It's your man Tyke, coming to you with another story, a true spook story. If you guys are liking the channel and the content, please hit that subscribe button, like the video, share if you feel the need to. But without further ado, today's story is going to be about a guy called Whistling Daniel. Before I get into the story, I want to describe Whistling Daniel to you guys. Whistling Daniel was about 6'2", solid muscle, and he was around the age of 19 years old. Whistling Daniel wasn't always, Whistling Daniel wasn't all the way there. And if I'm being insensitive, understand this took place in the early 2000s, late 90s. He was kind of mentally retarded, but he had enough faculty and sense not to get himself in trouble. So Whistling Daniel was the only boy born to a house full of women. He had about 4 or 5 sisters, a mother, and we never seen his father. Never seen his father. Granted, we all lived in the projects and we never see any of our fathers. Whistling Daniel had a marvelous singing voice. I remember R. Kelly's 12 Play album had just dropped, and my family would have Whistling Daniel come over and sing the song, and they would give him little bits of cash and keep his pockets full. And then all the women in the community would come over just to hear Daniel sing. He had a marvelous voice, I tell you. Well, Daniel, although he was older, Daniel used to hang out with my crew. Me, Goo, Chad, everybody. And although he was an older guy, people picked at him a lot. Although he was mentally impaired, the older kids picked at him a lot, and because, he hung out with who he felt comfortable with. So one day, we're all hanging out together, and Daniel and the crew and myself, we're at the basketball court. And we're playing basketball, and Daniel is towering over all us, kicking our ass in basketball, but he still had a heart of gold in the mind of a child almost, that it was basically kids playing kids. He didn't know his own strength. He didn't know his own power. So as we're playing basketball, Daniel shoots. The rock goes wild. It floats over there by a group of the older boys that was Daniel age, or about 2, 3 years older. So these guys are about 20, 21 years old. These were the roughnecks of the hood. They smoked pot, smoked cigarettes, cursed, flirted with all the women, just some hardcore cats. So the basketball hit the rim, it rocked, it goes over there, rolls over there by them. Daniel say, "I got it," and he runs over there. Now, although Daniel was towering over all of these guys, he wasn't a violent person. So as he go get the ball, they were like, "Hey, Daniel, pass me the rock." And Daniel say, this rock for my friend. This rock for my friend. And they were like, "Man, you too old to be playing with them young boys. What, you some faggot? You some sissy?" And you gotta excuse my words, good people, because at this time, that was the slang at the time. So we wasn't woke and enlightened as we are today. So they called him all these slurs, and he ignored them, and he tried to pass through them, so they surrounded him. So the first thing Daniel did, Daniel throws us the ball, and he say, "Hey, kids, y'all," he say, "Hey, everybody, y'all just keep on playing." So Daniel kind of had a stutter too. He had a stutter with a lisp. And Daniel would be like, "Hey, man, I don't want no trouble. I don't want to do this." So everybody just start, all of a sudden, the boys would start jumping Daniel. They punched him in the face. They was jumping on him, and they was kicking him, and they was just hurting him. And we went over there to try to defend Daniel. And we was young, man. We was thin, little malnutrition children. And they kept pushing us on the ground, but they knew not to really hit us. They definitely knew not to strike me, so they just kept pushing me on the ground. I was a little portly kid, kind of chubby. And they knew not to put their hands on me, but they just kept pushing me on the ground, because my family, they real assholes and tooth chippers at the time. But everybody else, they started kicking my little crew's ass. So all of a sudden, while Daniel is on the ground and he's like getting his ass towed up, stomped, kicked, they laughing at him, they pouring beer on him and stuff like that, and they just really working him over. So we stood there and we couldn't do nothing because one of the bigger boys had posted up us against the fence and just were like, y'all better not do nothing. It's gonna be y'all next. And they just laughing and they just throwing all kind of bottles at Daniels on the basketball court, like not hitting him with the bottle, but the glass is shattering by his head, and you could tell you could tell Daniel was really scared. So this had to go on for like 5 minutes, good people. I mean, 5 whole minutes of getting your ass handed to you. So the boys did this until they got tired. They took the basketball from us and then they proceeded to play a game of basketball with Daniel still laying on the ground. They didn't check to see was he okay. They didn't help him up or nothing. So Daniel just stood there and Daniel was kind of crying. He was crying so bad. I remember that. And he was just such a nice guy. And you ever saw somebody that was just had such a sweet heart, and when that particular person cries, it just breaks your heart because you wonder what madness could cause this person, what hurt this person has to feel to lose that generous soul of his. That was Daniel, people. So Daniel laid there, so we went over there to help our friend up, and Daniel started turning red and he got really mad. And he told us to go home. He said, y'all go home. And he was just laying down there and he stopped crying and sobbing. He just was turning mad and he was breathing like a bull, almost to like foam and smoke was coming out of his nose. I mean, it was a totally different Daniel we never seen before. So Daniel pushed us away and he said, go home. He said, y'all get out of here. And he kept pushing us off. And so we gotta go, man. Let's just leave Daniel alone. He gonna be like this and we don't want to piss him off. He was bigger than us, had more muscle tone than us, so we didn't want him to get mad at us and kick our ass because they kicked his ass, because I sure the fuck couldn't whoop him. So everybody, we just started going home. Now I'm gonna stop the story right there, and before I tell you what happened, I gotta share some more stuff about Daniel. So, about Daniel's family. Daniel was the only boy, again, born to a group of women. We never seen his father, never seen a brother or cousin. There was no other males. Daniel was the only male member in that house. Keep that in mind. Now, I remember when Daniel used to come over and sing for my mom, my grandma, my auntie, and them, and just every time one of the women in the neighborhood would catch him, they would have him sing R. Kelly's 12 Play, or that song by Troop, Spread My Wings, or something along that like that. So now, Daniel would come over, and although he had the singing, all the women loved him, I used to hear my mom and my grandmama telling my sister and my auntie now, y'all, neither one of y'all could date him. Y'all never get in a relationship with Daniel, because Daniel, he ain't right. He ain't like a normal person. And they kept saying that, and I didn't know what it was. Only thing I know, Daniel was my friend. Daniel was all our friend. So they kept saying, he'll bust your eardrums if he get mad. He'll bust your eardrums if he get mad. And I used to always wonder what that meant. So back to Daniel having this ability that nobody knew of, that he never used, that he can bust somebody's eardrum if he get mad. I have watched all my action flick, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Chuck Norris, so I know if you punch somebody in the ear, you can bust their eardrums, the ears start bleeding like in the movies. So that's what I think they were talking about he can do. He knew he had some special martial arts Green Beret skills that if he came at you, he would probably slap you in your fucking ear and bust your eardrum. So that was as far as my imagination can go. So my grandma said, don't date him, don't do nothing with him, don't piss him off, don't make him angry. Now keep in mind, these boys had just whooped Daniel's ass on the court. Daniel has just sent us home. So as we're about 3 clusters away from the basketball court. We lived in a project, so those of you that lived in a project or had family in a project, the terminology will be there. So we were 3 clusters away from the basketball court, and out of nowhere, we hear the loudest pitch whistle. We hear the loudest screech. If to put it in perspective, if you was standing next to a train and the conductor blew the whistle, I mean, if you was standing right next to the whistle, it was deafening. And we were three, it was coming from the direction of the basketball court where Daniel was on the ground and just got his ass whooped. We were 3 clusters away, and it was that loud to all of us. This is getting serious, try. So as we're sitting there, we're going back, we hear the noise, and we all grab our ears like, ooh, that's a crazy noise. And we didn't think nothing about it. The noise lasted for like, I'm gonna say about a minute and a half, because we kept digging in our ears like, man, we got ringing in our ear and all that stuff. We thought it was just because we got pushed down and banged up a little bit. So as we're walking on the main road to my house at the corner, to my family's apartment at the corner, Daniel must have gotten up and ran the back way down to my mom's house, because as I was turning up in the cluster, we lived in the first cluster. As I was turning up in the cluster, I hear a bunch of commotion, and Daniel's already at the house, and they're arguing and yelling and cleaning him up, cleaning the blood off of him. They're trying to bandage him up and wrap him up and things of that nature. So I get in the house and I say, hey, mama, they whooped on Daniel. And she's like, I know, baby. And I say, mama, we tried to stop him. And my mama said, you couldn't stop them boys. They bigger than you. Say, don't worry, Daniel took care of him. And I'm like, what you mean he took care of him? I'm like, not from what I seen. They done stomped Daniel ass into the mud, baby. And like, Daniel took care of him. So then I look at Daniel. He's at the table bawling, crying. And he's saying, I had to do it. I had to do it. I didn't want to do it. I'm sorry I did it. Don't tell my mom. Don't tell my mom. Don't tell my mom. He's just repeating this. And my mom like, baby, we going to keep you here till you calm down. We ain't going to send you home just yet. We going to make sure you're okay. So I'm trying to figure out what was going on. So my mom say, hey, go get Daniel some clothes. Go get him a shirt and a pair of your short pants and stuff. And again, I was a heavier kid, so my clothes could fit Daniel. So Daniel got cleaned up. Daniel got some food in his belly. He calmed down. And my grandmother was promising never to tell his mother that what Daniel had did. Keep in mind, we didn't know what Daniel did, but it was supposed to be a big secret. We could not tell Daniel had a fight or nothing. So a couple days passed. We're at the basketball court. I don't see the big boys no more. They was always there, gambling, smoking, drinking. I didn't see them there for about 3 or 4 days. On the 4th day, we go down there again after school. Now we see the boys there walking in the neighborhood, not at the court, but they're walking in the neighborhood, and they all limping, and one of them leaning on the walls, and they just really acting funny, leaning sideways, screwed up, and just off their gear. Well, as Daniel come from behind the building, because he was supposed to meet us at the court that day, they see Daniel and they start running. They take off and they start running like it ain't shit. And we like, Daniel, what did you do to these boys? I'm thinking Daniel done turned into a ninja and whooped some ass. And he say, I don't want to talk about it. So as he said he don't want to talk about it, we ignored it and shit. Okay, we don't want you to kick our ass like you kicked their ass. Now Daniel is that fear-based guy. So 8 o'clock come, we have to get home before the cows come home, you know. We back down, and all of a sudden we see Daniel's mother come storming out the house. She comes storming out the house, and she's like, what the fuck you did, Daniel? You son of a bitch, I told you not to be doing that dumb shit. You know you could get us all in trouble. And I'm like, okay, so Daniel really fucked him up. And she kept saying, you can get us kicked out of these projects if this shit keep happening. And Daniel like, Mama, I'm sorry, I had no choice. So she comes and she slaps him in his face and she gets him in the house. As Daniel's mother goes to storming and pissing and tripping and slapping him upside his head and doing all kind of crazy stuff to him, I said, oh shit, here it is. So my mom and my grandma come storming out of the house, and they're telling Daniel's mama, they like, Darlene, we don't need you to be whooping on that boy ass. Let us explain. And Daniel's mother was like, oh, y'all knew about this shit and y'all didn't tell me? And my grandmama, and this, get this, people, my grandmama ran back in the house, and she had got this long bamboo stick, and it had some kind of rattling bamboo beads in it. And she kept taking the stick and flipping it upside down the whole time she talking. And I never seen my grandma use the stick. I don't know what the stick is called, but she just had it, and she just kept on flipping it upside down. And when she flip it upside down on one side, the beads would come down and she'll flip it. Now she did this and she did this with haste, as if she was worried. The whole time Daniel, mother Darlene, was conversing with my mom and everybody. Now back to that. So Daniel's mother was like, y'all knew about this shit and y'all didn't tell me. And my boy sitting up here fighting, and y'all know what he can do. Y'all know what he did. What if I get kicked out? I lose my Section 8 and everything like that. And they were like, listen, ain't nothing gonna happen. That boy did what he had to do. You gotta stop nursing that boy. So now I'm trying to figure out, what the fuck is Daniel? What's going on? What's this family? Now I'm gonna stop it right here because the story ain't over, but I gotta explain this to you people. Now, Daniel's family, it was stated by my grandmama once the argument was over, and she rushed in the house and she put that stick by the door. She said, we may need this motherfucker in case that hoe come back down here and try to bust our eardrums. Now again, this is the second time I'm hearing that Daniel has the ability to bust people's eardrums, and now his mother has the ability to bust people's eardrums. And it was all, and keep in mind, it was a house full of women. Daniel was the only boy. So I say, what's going on, mama, grandma? So, they didn't want to talk to a child, but amongst themselves, the question was out there, so they started talking. And I heard my grandma say, that old banshee, listen to me now, y'all. My grandma said, that old banshee bitch, I knew that bitch when I was growing up. Say, that old banshee bitch done hurt a lot of people. Say, she with her voice and her whistle, she could make you sick. She could make you lose your fucking mind just by the way that bitch whistle at you. My grandma wasn't no joke, y'all. That's just the way it is. She was not for the kind to the youth, okay? Ears, that is. So I'm like, a banshee? What the fuck is a banshee? And I never heard these words before. They was foreign to me. So, Google wasn't out then. So we went to the library at school and we started looking up, banshee, asking the teacher what's a banshee. So when I looked up what a banshee was, it's something from like Scottish or Irish folklore that can sing the siren song, sort of like the sirens on the pirates on the ships. It sings a siren song that lure men and people to their death. Also, it can streak out real loud and bust your eardrums. It can make you sick. It could just drive you crazy with the whistle. It could put a sound in your head that you can't get out. It could hypnotize you. So these banshees was this, but here's the thing. All of the banshees are females. So I'm like, why is he a banshee? But so then I did a little more research. He was a behind. And it's like a behind. That's the version of a male banshee. And they're so far and rare in between. Now keep in mind, he was born inside of a house full of women. All his sisters he had nothing but sisters and his mother, and he was the only male. So he had to inherit this ability from them. So now I'm realizing that Daniel is a behind, a male banshee. My grandma knew, my mama knew, all the adults in the project knew. So I'm like, what the hell is going on over here? So my grandmama, I told you this wasn't over, so back to the story. So my grandmama is sitting up there and she explaining this to my mama. And she say, that's why y'all can't make him mad. That's why y'all can't date him. Because if y'all piss him off, he can bust your eardrums or kill you with a whistle. And the way Daniel's mouth was made, his lips look like he should be forming a whistle the majority of the time he speak, because he spoke with a lisp, and his bottom front tooth was kind of missing or very crooked. But the guy could sing. So we start calling him, after that, we start calling him Whistling Daniel. And he kind of took to that name, Whistling Daniel. So about 2-3 months passed, good people. And the boys, they're healthy again and they're back at the court. Daniel comes and they don't want to fuck with Daniel no more. As you can see, because I guess he used that whistling ability on them motherfucking ass. But it was not over for them boys. And again, you guys can Google this. This made news back in my day. I don't know if they still have it in the archive in Orlando. Daniel's mother came down there when the boys were there. It was Daniel's mother and Daniel's 3 sisters. And when I say all of them had hit the genetic jackpot, everybody was bad in the house. Only way you can tell the mother was the mother because she had gray hair, but it wasn't all the way gray. It had a couple streaks of gray in it. It was dark jet black with a couple streaks of gray in it. That's how you can tell her age. But other than that, the lady looked every bit of 35 and the kids looked every bit of 25, 27 years old. But they was all like 18, 19, 20s. So this whole family of females come to the basketball court where these guys was. And they was sitting on the park bench chilling, but they had stopped fucking with Daniel. It was over. They had healed from whatever Daniel did to him. So Daniel tapped us on the shoulder, and Daniel like, hey, y'all need to run. And I'm like, run for what? You know, keep in mind, I had forgot about what Grandma and Mama were talking about. So Daniel like, come on, let's go. So Daniel grabbed both of us, and he picked me up. You know, I'm slow and fat at the time. He picked me up, and he just threw me over his back, and we just like running. And I'm like, yeah, get it up, and all that kind of crazy shit. So Daniel took off really fast, and we all was running. Again, we heard the loudest whistle that we ever heard. But this time it was more like a song. It was more like a song, and I could still hear it. It was almost like the song I'm Calling You, but in whistle format. It was like, I'm calling you, but it was whistling. And so all of a sudden we hearing the whistle, and it's so harmonious, and all of a sudden those boys that was harassing her son on the basketball court, they stumbled home and they found each one of them boys dead. That's right. They found each one of them boys dead the next day. I'm gonna say within a week from each other. Them 4 boys was dead in their mother's apartment. Nobody knew what happened to them. But my grandmama knew. Daniel knew. His mama and sisters knew. People, they had went down there and did some heavy shit to them people. Fucked them up with a whistle. Cause she say nobody could know their secret. And them, I think that lady killed them boys with that whistling siren thing. So the mother grew up, got old, passed away. However, Daniel's sister and them grew up, got married, etc. Daniel stayed in the apartment under his mama's name, and nobody told that his mother had moved out, his sister and them moved out, and this time Daniel's a grown man, 25, 26, 28. Now we're just becoming, young adults ourselves. We're doing our thing, hanging out, and Daniel used to always walk in the neighborhood, and Daniel started hanging out with more young kids, playing on the basketball court with them. He's a grown man now, but that was his mindset, and he always stayed at this basketball court, and he would walk up and down the projects. Everybody was still asking Daniel to sing for him. He just was trapped in that life, but everybody took care of him. He could go to anybody's house, get a plate of food. I mean, he was just that nice guy. I remember I made a joke, and this is how intense Daniel had got. He was nice, but he had grown up, so he had been picked on a lot. So, and I made a joke. He had on some artificial tennis shoes from, I'm gonna say, Payless at the time. That was a shoe store that was pretty popular for the poor people. less fortunate, I should say. And he had on some some Payless shoes that they wasn't generic off-brand shoes. And I made a joke. I'm like, man, you make too much money. You too damn grown to be wearing that type of shit. And it kind of hurt his feeling. So he looked at me, he stared at me, and he was like, take that back. And I'm like, take what back? I'm 19, 20 years old. I got a little muscle tone now. I'm not some fat ass little kid. So then Spirit tapped me on the shoulder and say, apologize real quick. So I said, I'm just fucking with you, man. I said, come on, let's go to the shoe store. I got you. And he like, what? I said, I'm finna go buy you some Chucks, boy. So I didn't have a car at that time. We got on the city bus. And so we caught the bus on Colonial. And I, bought him some Chuck Taylors. That was his first name brand pair of shoes, good people. So he said, Tyke, you gonna always be my friend. You gonna always be my friend. And he was just hugging me and just so happy. And he was like, the women gonna love him. And he was finally gonna get him a girlfriend because he had good shoes and all that stuff. That's just the type of person he was. He just was happy. Well, I grew up and moved away from Daniel. I go back to the neighborhood as an adult trying to see, can we grasp that old magic? Daniel is still in the neighborhood to this day. But Daniel, but drugs and crack had really got bad and shit. So Daniel had the big boys, the dope boys of the neighborhood. They took on Daniel as a little simpleton. But Daniel was always they took on Daniel as a simpleton. So they would give him money, keep him fed, pay one or two girls to hit him off every now and then. And they gave him a job, so he was to look out in case 12 came. 12 is the police. In case 12 came. So he would stand at the corner of the block because it was two ways in. The other entrance by the elementary school, they had the lookout and they had walkie-talkies, but they couldn't put nobody in the lookout in the front because, the office was up there and the police would harass anybody there. But everybody knew Daniel as a mentally challenged adult, so he didn't do that. So with this high-pitched whistle ability, Daniel would be able to whistle, and you could hear him from one end of the road up there to the first cluster all the way to the basketball court, which I'm going to say was a long ways away because it would take a 15-minute walk to get down there. And he can whistle. So they referred to him as Whistling Daniel. And he would warn people. I drove through the neighborhood the other day to see, can I see Daniel standing out there to get a picture of him, but I couldn't. But when I asked some of the neighborhood kids or some of the old heads that's there, they say, oh yeah, Daniel, he's still around, but he don't come out much. I say, where's his apartment at? They say, oh, they relocated Daniel to another apartment in the back. But Daniel never comes outside anymore, and I don't know which apartment. But if I ever get a chance to go back there and see Daniel, I'm going to get a picture of him, and I'm going to put it in my house. But there you have it, folks. Daniel's family was a flesh and blood, living African American banshee, and he was the only male. He was a Bahan, a male banshee. During the four boys that beat Daniel up and hurt him, his mothers and his three sisters went out there and killed them boys with their siren sound. Those boys died within a week of knowing each other, a week of them confronting them at that basketball court. All right, everybody, I'm finna get out of here. I'm Tyke, telling you guys, be careful who you call, to be careful who you mess with, because you never know who or when they're gonna sound the alarm for help. Okay, everybody, take care. God bless. Until the next time.